and employment issues. I think there's this narrative that gets shoved down our throat by all politicians, which we lap up. We just suck it right up, regarding jobs and employment. And that's all well and good. Jobs are great, but they never pay any attention to quality of life. Okay? This idea that we need to be all working 40 hours a week in order to get by is ridiculous. With our technological advances, okay, human productivity is, what was it? Something like 2.1 times what our individual productivity was in the 70s in developed nations. So that means that human beings are accomplishing twice as much as they ever have, right? So you'd think to yourself, well, so shouldn't that mean that we'd have, we'd have to work half as much? Shouldn't that mean that we can live a comfortable lifestyle and not have to spend, 45 or 50 hours a week working, just relentlessly all day working? That didn't happen. That didn't happen. Our productivity went up, but the benefits just started going up and up and up. And that's what caused the gap in wealth. That's what's caused this huge major gap. And also in conjunction with that, automation is removing the necessity for a lot of jobs that were typically done by, just people doing repetitive tasks. We're losing even more jobs to machines and efficiencies, right? But the people that are working just as hard. There's just no jobs for anybody else. This seems backwards to me. On the one hand, there's people that resist automation because of the fact that it reduces the necessity for human beings to do things, which is fair enough, which is a fair point. But with that automation, we still live in a society where the expectation is we all work 40 hours a week. Okay? It doesn't have to be that way. We can take advantage of automation to reduce the amount of hours that people need to work in order to live comfortable lifestyles. We can use automation to increase the resources people have to become more educated and more skilled so that they can do things above and beyond what a robot can do. And there needs to be support networks put in place for that. The idea that you should avoid improving a process because it will mean that there's less people to do it is silly. Less people required to do it. That's a silly idea. What you want to do in a society where people can be happy is replace the menial jobs with machines, and create more high-level functioning jobs, and with that, build a structure where there isn't demand, where they have to spend their entire lives working towards something. Okay, so that's what you have to do. You can always manufacture a job if you're doing it creatively and constructively, right? We see this in investing in education, which will be a part of the platform here. If we have machines that are doing a lot of the processes, those people that would be rendered unemployed by those processes, we can now start manufacturing and creating jobs for them in the fields of manufacturing the robots that manufacture other things, right? Programming, machinists, stuff like that. Just make an incredible force to educate people in these fields of creating the robotics and the automation to make us things. And then once you have all those people that have been heavily trained in how to build the automation, you start funding them and getting them to build the systems that automate things, right? There's always going to be a purpose for human beings to do things. It's just, what are we going to do? Are we going to fight to protect archaic structures of society that requires, a human being to do a thing that a robot could do, simply because we've got no other purpose for them? Or should we use our social structures to push people in the direction of making more automation to replace those positions and get people going that direction? People are still going to be working and doing things. They're just going to maybe spend a little bit more time learning. A lot more time learning. People will spend more time learning how to do things in terms of science and whatnot than they ever had before. And allocating the less, less mentally critical tasks to as many robots as you can. It's the smart thing to do. Which again is going back to our whole solar panel thing. That is the only way that you're going to be able to produce the massive solar panels that you're going to need to run the planet completely on solar electricity, is to just start throwing resources at anybody who could be interested in developing the technology of automation. Just throw it at them. And then once they've got a reasonably solid idea, start throwing money at the development and creation of those technologies. Yeah. Okay, so there's that. Now, I know, I'm sure that's probably going to sound like socialism or whatever. I don't care. Get over it. Now, again, what about all the people? You can't just have a society where everybody just builds robots, right? What about everybody else? Okay, what about somebody that just wants to, work in, just wants to be an artist? Maybe they just want to be an artist. The social structure in which I just laid out, if you were to let it go uncontrolled, would result in essentially the people that have the skills to manufacture robots and create the programming and architecture to do that being the super most ultra rich powerful people in the world, and just the power being shifted. Well, I guess it would essentially be the same thing as it is now. There'd be no power within the people's hands because they'd all be dependent on a minimalist state. What we have to do in order to make this a sustainable prospect is that we subsidize and we fund private companies in terms of building automation and building the machines that replace human beings, okay? So how do we counteract that destroying society? Well, each machine that they build that replaces a human being is taxed upon what the comparative human cost would be, okay? So let's say Starbucks has replaced all its baristas with Starbucks has replaced all its baristas with the machine. Okay, so they no longer have to pay a barista. Just a little robot hand comes out and gives you your coffee, and everything's great. And somebody just lost the job, and Starbucks is still making money. Well, that instance of that machine that is replacing that human being's job will have a tax put on it. That machine will be taxed as if it had an income. And that tax will go towards the pool of social safety and all these different things, right? So the basic idea is we move towards automation. Company replaces human being with robot. Company has to pay the government, say, whatever. If it's replacing a minimum wage, $3 an hour, $4 an hour, the company has to pay the government in order to replace that human being with a robot. And in turn, that money gets put into a big pot, which goes towards social programming and education to help, to spread out the wealth, so that other fields of interest also have money as well. Right, so we don't just live in an oligarchy where a very, very select few control all the robots and no benefits are ever seen by the regular rest of people. Right, that's and that sort of does sort of happen on its own in a way. In turn, like the free market will mean that companies compete with each other and they use robotics, and the end result is the cost of goods coming down, which is kind of a similar idea. It handles things on the cost production side of things so that things become cheaper to purchase, but it doesn't really help on the distribution side of things where, all the money still gets funneled directly towards the heads of these major corporations that make just trillions of dollars. And they suck it all out of society. So that's in my view, that is kind of a balance between the idea of capitalism and the idea of communism is the idea of a socialized robot state. Robots are doing the bulk, and automation is doing the bulk of our life critical tasks. And that leaves more than enough money and resources left over for the rich people to be rich and have their richness. And it creates the efficiencies that can allow everybody else to not have to work 40 hours a week at the job that they hate just to get by. They have the freedom to learn things, do new things, create new things, and enjoy life. Simple enough. And build the infrastructures that will help save the planet from its own demise. That's another thing. A lot of that free time that those people will have can be put towards